Hello, my name is John Patrick Ison. I'm a writer, artist, and a PhD researcher from the Department of Media Study at the State University of New York in Buffalo. Unfortunately, due to a sudden, very serious heart complication this past week, I had to cancel my trip to Gwangju, and I'm very regretful that I could not join Sue and Lim on stage at this very moment for this panel. In addition to experiencing all the wonderful talks, artworks, and performances and festivities at isea this year, this upcoming week. But I am looking forward to the Q&A session with both Sue and Lim and Julieta, who will also join us later via Skype at the end of this presentation. Okay, so my presentation is titled Unconscious Hyperbodies, Unconscious Spaces, Unconscious Objects as Datafied Particles. So the first part of this presentation is an analysis of dust. It's an interactive virtual reality installation by artists Maria Hudova and Andrei Boleslavsky, of which I experienced at the Connecting the Dots Media Art Festival conference in Mexico City, Mexico, last fall in September 2018. What I found most interesting about dust is how it uses VR technology to aesthetically portray the human body in motion, not just in a very simple or simplistic visual sense, but it portrays the body as sort of like a one collective hyperbody in motion, dancing with and apart from what appeared to be layers or perhaps floors of dust to the audience. But to the user, and this is a photo of me here at the installation itself, inside the Centro de Cultural Digital, right in the heart of Mexico City, the hyperbody seamlessly, in a poetic sense, blends with the dust, blends with the space it occupies, almost as a one collective motioning particle. In this instance, I purposely use the term hyperbody in quotations, not just to describe the bodily character that the user visually represents within the virtual space of dust itself. I also use hyperbody to signify the reflexive spatial capability of the virtual and physical spaces that the user simultaneously occupies. Perhaps this is a reason why the artists Maria Hodova and Andrei Boleslavsky chose the title Dust for this particular artwork, since they both found inspiration in the very fact that human bodies, physical spaces, literally every element on this planet were quote-unquote formed at the heart of the stardust. Perhaps it is only fitting that they virtually portray both the user and the spaces it is dancing in as literal pieces of dust themselves, since the human body and the physical space that the installation is held in are essentially comprised of dust also. So in addition to conceptually fitting the physical composition of a dust particle into the artwork's central idea, the use of VR technology is essential for the user to maneuver past the divide between the artwork's virtual and physical realms, blurring the user's perception of the virtual space along with its own virtual body, and ultimately providing the artists the ability to maneuver past concrete definitions of body and space, especially within the virtual plane of dust itself, regardless of the installation's physical setting. In this case, it's the cultural center there in Mexico City. The second half of this presentation is in part about how my upcoming installation, Yogurt, more or less mirrors dust in its portrayal of the body and the space it occupies as one composite hyperbody, one composite space, one composite object. But instead of being visually dependent on dust particles, Yogurt, my installation, will hinge on the yogurt's ingredients, its nutritional data, and those food ingredients' points of origin. Similar to how dust whittles down both bodies and spaces as dust particles, yogurt will ultimately datafy bodies and spaces via the ingredients, nutritional data, and those food ingredients' origins. For this particular presentation, I will mostly focus on the yogurt's ingredients and where they are mapped on the state of New York, since I mostly used a yogurt that were mainly distributed in New York State or within nearby states. For example, okay, so take a look at these 8 yogurt brands, which I will be mainly basing my installation off of. With the exception of 3 brands, Colburn Farms, Stonyfield, and Organic Valley, 5 of the yogurt makers are made and distributed in New York State, with only 2, Upstate Farms and Wegmans Plain Almond Milk Yogurt, being located approximately in or near my home city of Buffalo, New York. Just as how Hudova and Boleslavsky's dust blends the user's virtual body with the virtual spaces it occupies via figurative dust particles, yogurt will provide participants of the installation actual data visualizations of the yogurt ingredients' origins on a map via projections, which will surround the user/eater once he or she is served the bowl of yogurt, and the QR code on the bowl, as you can see here, is scanned and triggers the data visualizations. Although the user of yogurt does not virtually dance within and along the provided virtual space, just as the user of dust is allowed to do, yogurt will allow the users to be virtually in sync in a cognitive sense with the yogurt ingredients in a much more nuanced, succinct fashion. Although the users of yogurt will not be using VR technology per se to promote this experience, their sense of understanding what they have ingested is to a certain extent cognitively augmented via the information of the ingredients' origins. How far did those ingredients travel from to the point where they end up on their dinner table and ultimately eat them? I find this particularly interesting since we live in a world today, at this day and age, where data can be drawn from everything, it seems, and they literally have been drawn from wherever we may be at any point in time. Although food does not seem at all interesting and may not necessarily be a fashionable or a regular object to be inspired by and draw art from, humans simply cannot survive without eating, plain and simple. So it is this very reason why interpreting the human body as one composite body, one composite space, comprised of food ingredients and nutritional data, that I would argue would be very useful towards current and future uses of VR and AR technologies. If we were to envision food as bits of multiple, seemingly endless data particles, just as data provides a user the visual perception that our very own bodies and the spaces that our bodies occupy are ultimately comprised of dust, then perhaps we will find new ways to ultimately envision food, not just as static objects with particular means to an end other than resources for sustenance or nutrition or pleasure, since they adhere to a certain kind of enjoyment when eaten. Then maybe we can envision ourselves and our relationships with food in new, interesting, much more sustainable means as well. Thank you.